Welcome back. I'm continuing my conversation with Nisha Agrawal, who is a development economist, has been the CEO of Oxfam India, and was with the World Bank for 20 years. We are talking about her book, Her Right to Equality from Promise to Power. Welcome back, Nisha.
Thank you so much, Aparna.
Nisha, my son, he was 6 and he said, that I do men respect women. And, honestly, I was so taken aback. And, after a lot of interrogation, he finally told me that he read it on an auto. It said this auto driver respects women. You see after Nirbhaya, all these autos have this written at the back. What would you tell a child? What would you tell children his age, both boys and girls, about gender roles?
I think
About
the
our roles as
most important thing to tell them is that these are not God-given roles. We've just made them up. And they're just as easy to unmake and make fresh ones, right? That it's all up to us to decide how we want to live. A very important thing, we have all been, in our pursuit of equality, we have been working on creating a new kind of girl, a new kind of woman, somebody who's more aware of their rights, somebody who can go out and demand them. What we have not changed is our boys and men. And so there's this sort of clash happening now where women are demanding their rights, but the boys are completely unreformed and are refusing to give them those rights, right? You take a law, for example, like property rights. We have a law which says that boys and girls should equally, sons and daughters should inherit property equally, ancestral property. It's just on paper because the sons will not give it to their sisters. And for a girl to choose between taking her brother to court or taking her father to court versus having that relationship, they just don't want to deal with it.
true. So they feel bad about it.
You feel bad about it because you should not have to make that choice. So we have to really work on men and boys now. Gloria Steinem, who is one of the early leading feminist economists, she said, we are raising our girls now the way we used to raise our boys. So here are these girls trying to give them a voice, go out and play, go out and learn, go out and do what your dream. But we do not have the courage yet to raise our boys as if they were girls. Make them a little gentler, make them a little more respectful, treat them differently, a softer creature, a more emotional creature, somebody who's happy to experiment with different roles, play a supportive role instead of always wanting to be out there. So for boys, I think this is now the next generation of work that you see will all be with the 6-year-olds like your son. And if we can mold them differently, give them books to read. At Oxfam, we sponsored this book which was about girls and their dreams and all the wonderful girls and everything they've achieved, from becoming space heroes to becoming scientists to doing completely norm-shattering kinds of roles, Instead of always looking at Superman and Superboy, why not a book for your son, not for your daughter, but for your son, about everything that little girls have achieved and their dreams. So, so that respect has to be created. It's not inborn. And around him, when he's watching TV and so on, you're seeing the violence, you're seeing, such difficult conditions for women. Again, we are living at this moment where so many things are happening. The Calcutta case of this girl, we don't have safety at work. You have this whole Malayalam film industry. Slowly things are changing. And of course, if he's a very observant kid, he's seeing disrespect. And it's so exciting that he's questioning it. That why should it be such a disrespectful world? And what can we do? So every little 6-year-old boy, that's the target.
Right.
And raising them properly will create a next generation of men that will be respectful of their sisters and their daughters and their friends and everybody else, their partners,
True. In fact, I think men, unfortunately, have also got the burden of bringing in money to the family. And maybe they don't want it, a lot of them, right? I think they also end up, that frustration also possibly must be coming out at some point, right? And there are enough women who will want to take on that burden.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, which
choices, these gender stereotypes limit choices for both of them, not just for women.
Absolutely.
It's as frustrating, I'm sure, for men who would like to explore a whole range of other ways of living and being.
Absolutely. Gender equality is literally in every pore of our being, of our society at some level. not at some level, at every level.
Yeah.
Even the most educated, right? When you look left and right, you will see that everybody faces inequality. All the women I know at some point or the other have faced inequality.
Yeah.
What can be done to change this? Of course, lots is being done to change it, but really, if you look at broad pointers, because you've done so much research on this, what would be the things that could potentially change this?
So I think we are just talking about changing a mindset. And where does that come from? It comes from our homes and it comes from the schools. You have to start at a very young age to teach about equality and about respect to children. If you look at, say, the environmental movement, for example, it's much easier teaching and molding a young mind than older people. And so it's really being taught in schools, switch off the light, use the water well, don't waste, don't do this. And the children are coming home and actually teaching their parents. And I think this is another of those issues where it will be much easier to mold younger minds than to try and, unlearn for us what we have been taught all our lives. So if you look at school books, for example, I worked on Indonesia when I was with the World Bank. We had this little project that some NGO wanted to do, which was fantastic. They looked through all the school books and you would see the typical depiction. The man is getting ready in the morning, picks up the briefcase, goes off to work. The mother goes off into the kitchen to do the cooking. Now imagine if you were just to reverse that in some books, how powerful that would be. So what is this? This is just that we have assigned certain roles to men and women that are very, very hard to shake off. And we have to teach our children very young that there's no such thing. It's not because of our sex. Gender and sex are two very different things. Gender are the roles that society has assigned to us. We could just unassign them and assign completely different roles to men and women. And these very stereotypical roles also, not only are they harmful for women, but they really limit the choices for men as well. Maybe there are men who just don't want to pick up a briefcase and go to work and would rather spend the day in the kitchen. Why not? So it's really limiting everybody's choices. We are just given these grooves and we have to go get ready and go into them instead of questioning them. So I think we have to start there, and really most of the children are going to public school. So working hand in hand with the school system. I think the other big area I would say is role models, because one thing is what we learn in school, but then one is you come home and you sit in front of a TV and what do you see? And those same messages are reinforced in media, by role models, by people that we look up to. The whole ecosystem comes together to make their dreams happen, just the way we do for men. In my view, these would be the two big things,
Standard practice, Nisha, is to believe that India is the worst in terms of gender inequality. Where do we stand, on the gender inequality index?
Very low.
Really?
Very low, yes. We have this aspiration to be a world guru and a world this and world that, and it will not come just from having our economy in the top league and becoming trillions of dollars and so on. We also need to work on all these other indices that are measuring equality. So if you take the Gender Equality Index of the UN, we are 108 out of all the countries in the world, right? We are now the third or fourth largest economy. Why don't we aspire to be the third or fourth on that index? That would create such a different India from the one we live in, where any woman in any job going to work is fearful for her safety. It should not be like that. What is going to happen in the bus, in a train, in the workplace, in anything. And the World Economic Forum, their index, if you take that, 129 out of all the countries in the world. Any index that you take, we are never in the top 100. So yes, there is something. And I think more shockingly, I would say the right comparison within our region. In our region in South Asia. So it's not that there is something inherent about our region that we have to be so patriarchal as we are in India. Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, they're all ahead. Then comes India and then comes Pakistan.
That's really shocking.
It can be changed. Bangladesh probably was just like India, let's say 50 years ago or something. They adopted policies which were going in for this very labor-intensive manufacturing, in a way what is called the East Asia model. You just open up the sector, you invite a lot of investment into textiles, garments, footwear, food processing, toys, electronics, anything that requires a lot of labor. And where would that labor come from? It came from the women. A lot of these jobs, if you go into a factory in East Asia, in Indonesia or Cambodia, thousands and thousands of young girls who have come in from the countryside for these jobs. And it transforms them forever, And parents start valuing their girls because they know they are the ones who are going to be bringing in the money and will be looking after them in their old age. So if you can get these girls a job, and that is what has transformed Bangladesh. All these women came out of their homes to work in factories. Now, we in India, one policy that we did particularly wrong in 1991 when we liberalized, we didn't at that time liberalize our manufacturing sector. We went in for the service sector, but also the very high-end services, banking reform, telecom reform, airline reform, all very good things to do. I mean, all these things have improved so dramatically. But they're very limited. Tech, of course, that's another one. They're very small in numbers compared to the number of jobs that can be created in manufacturing.
Right.
And for that, it would have required a lot of different kinds of investments in infrastructure, for example, roads, electricity, these very basic things. You can't take things to export them if you don't have a well-connected infra. And we then somehow have bypassed that for 40, 50 years, and we still have not gotten there. So there are no jobs for women.
It's terrible. How come nobody's looking at it?
They're looking at it, but some think that now it's too late to look at it because soon everything will be replaced by tech and AI and this and that. Whereas, we still have a window. We still wear shoes.
Yes.
Maybe even if it's just 20, 30 years, it could actually transform India. So that is what is needed to create some value for women, get them out there. And China did this very deliberately, rural industrialization. You have to take the jobs into rural areas because that's where women are, and they will not necessarily migrate to urban areas to grab those jobs. We have no jobs for rural women in India. Nothing. Nothing is going on. They're sitting on these tiny, tiny pieces of land, which doesn't require such a large number of people. And there's very high levels of underemployment in rural India.
It's like everything is being done with vision, but without vision. It's literally like that. If I'm just thinking that if one was to really look at from the top and say that, this to me seems like such a big missing piece.
These norms can change if you adopt good economic policies, if you adopt good laws, and if you, implement those laws as well. These are not just given and stuck forever.
I think people do recognize that, women, when they are in power, they can make a difference. They are far more collaborative, they are more sensitive. So do you think there could be a more equal world by 2047 as everybody's pegged this year, 2047?
I think it's good to have a peg. Otherwise, we just carry on, So we have this dream that 100 years from independence, we will have arrived. But at the moment, we only think of will we be the second largest economy or the third? It's all in terms of trillions of rupees. But to actually say we will be living in a more equal India, it's not happening. I told you where we are on those indices. All of those people have calculated, and not just in India, but in the world as a whole, if you want gender parity, it's like 120 or 30 years away. So if it's business as usual, no, India will look just like this. We will be sitting here, we will be talking about domestic violence, we will be talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, we will be talking about lack of voice, visibility, power for women. And is it changing? No, it's not. This new parliament has fewer women than the last one, So we have never crossed that 15%. We've gone backwards now. And this is despite the fact that so much pressure is put by women's groups and women's movements. So you need business as usual. We are not getting there. We are not seeing that kind of change. As we said, not even marginally creeping change. It's backwards or forwards or sideways or something, but not like, okay, there's progress and we just need to, make it faster. No, there's no progress, I would say. But it can be done. We know what it will take.
Thank you, Nisha. It's indeed, interesting to hear all these insights from you. And we'll continue our conversation. Do keep watching and remember to subscribe to In Pursuit Of.